Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some I Don't Work Here Lady. Our first story today comes to us from JoeSatomiKaren. Those comics are worth a fortune. Let's jump right in. One of my all-time favorite stories to tell when hanging out with other comic book geeks. Backstory: so I used to be a huge comic book fan and buyer. I hung out at the local comic book shop for hours at a time, couple of times a week, not counting shipment day, and talked shop with the owner, the guy who ran the shop, and the myriad of regular customers. Shop owner I'll dub Mr. Albertson, guy who ran the shop will be Jeff, other monikers as people get introduced. The comic book shop was located on a busy street, and the back part of this shop was a living quarters for Mr. Albertson. There was no public restroom in the shop area. Now, Mr. Albertson was a very nice, intelligent guy, someone I called a friend and respected. Sadly though, he had issues when it came to hygiene. The bathroom in his living quarters was just plain nasty. As I had worked in rental property make-ready for over 20 years, when I say nasty, I mean get the freaking flamethrower and burn it nasty. I knew this because I fixed the faucet in the bathroom once. Then, I immediately went home and took a nice hot bath with bleach in the water. Jeff understandably refused to use this bathroom. He would hold it till lunchtime and use the public restroom at a local restaurant. Afterwards, he would wait till he got home. Sometimes, however, Jeff just couldn't wait. The need was too urgent. When this happened, he would close the shop and take a break. Setup: one day while I was in the shop, I could tell Jeff was in some amount of distress. I asked him what was wrong, and he informed me that he really had to use the restroom, as something he ate was not agreeing with him, but couldn't just close the shop due to the fact that the shop's biggest money customer was expected to come in at any time now to pick up his weekly order. I thought it over and told Jeff that I could stay and watch the store. I knew Mr. Big Bucks always paid with a check, so if he came in for his order while Jeff was away, I would simply tell him the amount Jeff always pre-calculated on the preview order's invoice. Then, I would take the check and slide it under the cash register. Jeff knew me very well from many years of hanging out in the shop, and my family's reputation for honesty and integrity was well known. Jeff readily agreed and made a run for it. 5 minutes later, Mr. Big Bucks walks in the door and asks where Jeff is. I tell him Jeff had to answer nature's call really badly. Therefore, I was watching the store until he got back. I went behind the counter, pulled out Mr. Big Bucks' weekly superhero addiction delivery and the preview's invoice order form. Mr. Big Bucks checked the order, approved the invoice amount, and wrote out the check. I then slid it under the cash register. Now, normally Mr. Big Bucks is in a hurry, grabs his order, and leaves. But today, while he was checking the inventory, Mr. Action walked in the door. Mr. Action is not just a regular, but a respected dealer in comic books and collectibles. Mr. Big Bucks and Mr. Action struck up a conversation. I just leaned against the counter and continued to read the latest issue of Amazing Spider-Man. A few pages later, a nasty scowl walked in the door, followed a second later by the face wearing it. It was a 30-ish something woman, hair pulled back tight in a pigtail, pink sweatshirt with pink across the chest. She was carrying a cardboard box that looked like it had been in a flood. "You, give me $1,000, she said as she heaved the box onto the counter. "Excuse me?" I replied, while flinching back from the stench of mold coming from the box. "Give me $1,000. Why?" "You buy comics, these are comics, so give me my money." More than a little off-kilter by the demand for money and the attitude, I stuttered out a response. First, I don't work here. Second, this shop isn't a dealer in old comics. Miss Nasty Scowl cut me off. "I know very well you work here. My boyfriend told me that the fat guy who works behind the counter would give me money for these old comics. He also told me not to let you cheat me. I want $1,000 now." If Gabriel Iglesias was around back then, he would say I was just shy of being fluffy. "Look, lady, I don't work here. The regular fat guy is running." Snort and guffle came from the comic racks. "Shut it, you two," I said over my shoulder. "I don't work here. I'm just watching the shop while the regular fat guy who runs the store is out on an errand. He'll be back soon, but even still, he doesn't buy old comics," I reiterated. Miss Nasty Scowl actually growled at me. "Even if there is another fat guy who normally runs this place, you are here now. You are behind the counter now, so you will give me my money now." Mr. Action tried to say something, but he was cut off by Miss Nasty Scowl, screaming, "You shut up, I wasn't talking to your old ugly butt." Well, I've been told I have the patience of a saint, but I've got my limits. I looked at a visibly irritated Mr. Big Bucks and a now steaming mad Mr. Action. Suddenly, I had a thought. That thought bumped into a few others, and within seconds, I had a funny idea. Turning back to Miss Nasty Scowl, I said in a calm voice, "You're right, miss, I apologize. You see, we get people coming in here trying to sell fake old comics. We have to be careful, you understand." "Whatever, just give me my money." "Let's take a look at what I am sure is a fine collection," I said with my best shoveling it deep smile. When I opened the cardboard box's top, I nearly gagged at the smell of mold. Inside was indeed comics. Comics that looked like they may have been stored in a cellar that flooded. They were covered in mold, sticking together, and just in completely rotten shape. After flipping through a few that were not stuck together, I let out a loud gasp of shock. "Oh my God," I yelled. "Mr. Action, come here quick. Look what she has." "I'm fine over here," he said, while pinching his nose. "No, look," I firmly said while turning my head and giving a conspirator's wink and smirk at Mr. Action. Curious as to what I was up to, Mr. Action followed my prompt and came behind the counter. To Miss Nasty Scowl, "You're in luck today. This is Mr. Action. He's our local authority on comic book appraisals. From what I've only glanced at, this collection of yours is worth way more than a measly $1,000. I'd say it's worth $20,000 at least. Right, Mr. Action?" Mr. Action has known me for many years. He was, in fact, one of my teachers in high school and had seen my sense of humor in action many times. He had no idea where I was going with this, but he knew it would go someplace ridiculously funny, for us at least. "Good lord, these are Casper the Friendly Ghost comics, Richie Rich, and are these Archie comics?" Giving Miss Nasty Scowl his most eager expression. "Do you have any idea how rare these comics are?" "No. Are they worth more than $1,000? "Way more," I declare. "In fact, Mr. Big Bucks, didn't you once buy an Archie comics collection at auction? What did you pay, 10 to 12 grand? I'm sorry, miss, but we are just a small town collector shop. We simply do not have the budget to purchase this expensive collection. You need to take these to one of the big stores in the city. Mr. Action, what is the name of that dealer you're always complaining about? You know, the one where you said stole clients from you?" I asked, knowing he would get my prompt. Sure enough, a nasty smile crossed his face. "Mr. Burns, let me write down his address for you, my dear," Mr. Action said as he reached for a pen and a scrap piece of paper. Now with address in hand and a greedy smile plastered on her face, Miss Nasty Scowl carried her box of molded comics out of the store. "What the hell was that all about?" Mr. Big Bucks asked, still confused. Mr. Action and I set about explaining the prank we just pulled on the woman and a crooked dealer both Mr. Action and I had run afoul of on separate occasions. 20 minutes later, Jeff returned. The three of us ensured he was okay. When he asked if anything happened while he was gone, the three of us just shook our heads and said, "Nope." The next week, I went in to hang out with Jeff for a bit. Jeff looked at me for a second, then said, "Funny thing happened yesterday. A really pissed off woman came in here, screaming about how our other employee lied to her. I thought she was talking about the owner, Mr. Albertson, at first, but then she said he was another fat bastard like me. I told her I was the only employee. What did she say then?" I asked. "Nothing. She just screamed like a maniac and stormed out, leaving a box full of worthless old moldy comics." So when the entitled Karen came in and started calling the guy fat, did anybody else have the picture in their head of the comic book guy from The Simpsons? That just put this whole story on a completely different level for me. OP, wonderful story. Nobody got hurt except for maybe Karen's pride. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from OneGrape9883. A lady at the grocery store. Let's jump right in. This isn't necessarily a I don't work here, but I tried posting it elsewhere. In a roundabout way, this is a I don't work here story. I was at the grocery store and had a shopping cart full of returnable bottles. I stopped to pull out my cigarette when a woman yells at me, "Hey, don't do that. You don't know who was smoking that." I told her it was my cigarette and I was just putting it out. "It's okay. Here, take this and buy yourself some food. And only food, you hear me? You need it, honey." And handed me a $10 bill. Then it dawned on me why she thought that I am homeless. I am on vacation. My clothes were dirty from cleaning the barbecue grill. I was a bit of a mess. I was pushing a shopping cart full of refundable bottles. I have a tall plastic garbage can I use for bottles and cans. I tried telling her I didn't need it, but she wouldn't listen to me. I returned the bottles and took the receipt from the machine. I picked up some soda and snacks. The woman yelled at me and told me that's not what she meant by buying for myself. Once again, I tried to explain, but she wanted nothing to do with it. She just wouldn't listen. We both headed for the checkout and I made sure I was behind her. Her shopping cart was filled to the top. The cashier began to ring up her groceries, and before she could pay, I handed the cashier my credit card and told her I was paying for it. The woman just stared at me as her bill was over $100. When it was my turn to cash out, I handed the cashier my slip from the refundable bottles and paid for the rest with my credit card. And she just stood there looking at me. I smiled and said, "Ma'am, I tried to tell you I didn't need your money. I truly appreciate your caring, concern, and kindness. It's not something you see nowadays." I explained why I looked so scuffy. The woman turned beet red and tried apologizing for thinking I was homeless. I told her there is no need to be apologizing for her kindness. I reached into my wallet and gave her my business card with the name and address of my restaurant and told her, "Thank you, just show this card anytime and your meals are free," and left. Since then, I have seen her. I walked to her table and said hello. She didn't recognize me at first in my dress shirt, tie, and dress pants, and I was clean shaven with my hair combed. When she comes in, I always sit with her and talk. She has tried paying for her meals, but the staff knows her and knows not to give her a receipt. She is a very sweet woman and a person we need more of, especially in these days. She is a gem and very precious. I'm sorry if this sounds like I am tooting my own horn. I am not trying to. I feel I needed to tell the whole story. I honestly thought with the lead up that we had that this person was going to turn out to be an absolute Karen, but she didn't. She turned out to be really kind-hearted. And then OP turned out to be really kind-hearted too. What the heck is this? These stories don't belong on Reddit. No, just kidding. Nice to have a nice one every once in a while. But let's just toss the kind-hearted stories right back out the window with the story from Clusions. I don't work here as of right now. Let's jump right in. A few years ago, I worked for a wonderful Midwest grocery store chain, hint, we wore blue. I had just graduated college and put my 2 weeks in because I landed my first big boy job with my shiny new degree. I was a front-end supervisor, less glorious than it sounds, and also had to run the money services counter. There we sold lottery tickets, handled returns, and other things. This story happened, I crap you not, on my last day. My shift ended that night at 9 p.m. It was about 8:50 p.m. at the time this took place. Piece of info, we could leave about 7 minutes early because the time clock rounded up to the nearest 15 minutes, so if you clocked out at 8:53, it would round to 9 o'clock. So, like I said, it's about 8:50. I literally have 3 minutes until I'm gone forever. The service desk closes at 9. Since I was the only person with access to it working that night, I had already closed it, was about to head out when middle-aged grumpy man came in and we had this exchange. "I need a lottery ticket." "Sorry, sir, the service desk is closed." "It's not 9 p.m. yet." Again, I'm sorry. We did not have a line, so we went ahead and closed it to assist customers at the checkout lanes. "You either get me a lottery ticket or I'm not buying these groceries and you can put them away." This man had like $400 worth of crap in his cart. At this point, I'm done and I don't care anymore. "Sir, actually, I don't work here." Confused. "Yes, you do. I saw you all the time. Now get me an effing ticket." Today is the final day of my 2 weeks notice and my shift is over right now, 8:53. So no, I don't work here. So tonight, you don't get crap and I'm not putting crap away. Have a horrible night. At this point, the look on his face was priceless as I simply walked to the time clock, punched out, and went home. Now, OP mentioned in a comment down below that one of their coworkers started laughing at this point and just couldn't stop, and they actually ended up getting written up for it. That would honestly be a write-up that I'd be proud of. Check out all 3 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.